Hey there, IMD. So last time we saw the Doctor, he regenerated. And soon we'll see this new Doctor in his first adventure. But how did this entire regeneration cycle begin? It's a long story. But it all began when William Hartnell, who played the first Doctor, started having health issues, so he needed to be replaced. In universe, it would be explained that he would die, but heal from what's killing him, which had the unfortunate side effect that it changes his appearance. Now the serial that introduced this notion, i.e. the 10th planet, also introduced the Cybermen, which to this day continues to be one of the Doctor's greatest adversaries. And how can they not be? When you think about it, they succeeded where others failed, including the Daleks. Granted, the Cybermen took only one of the Doctor's lives, instead of killing him completely, but that's still more than can be said about anyone else the Doctor had faced up to that point. Now, I would think that every Whovian would love to see the episode where the Doctor first regenerated. Unfortunately, that exact episode is one of the 100 episodes of the show that is missing. Sure, the serial is now available on DVD, and they animated the final episode so to fill in the void, but let's face it, it's just not the same. Luckily, there are other alternatives, like the novelisation that was released 10 years later, which should actually be more interesting, because what Jerry Davis couldn't say on screen, he can now share with us in the novel, giving these Cybermen a never-before-seen dimension. Unfortunately, the story hasn't aged well. It already begins with the title, The 10th Planet, which was written with the idea that Pluto is a planet. Now, for all you purists who think that Pluto should still be considered a planet, I've looked into why it's no longer a planet. It started with the discovery of Eris, another celestial body that orbits our Sun, which helped scientists define the term dwarf planet and found that Pluto fit the definition, since it's actually smaller than Eris. Okay, I may have butchered astronomy quite a bit there, but the point is, if Pluto should be considered a planet, so should Eris. So we'd have 10 planets. So maybe this book should be called The 11th Planet. As far as scientists are concerned, there are only 8 planets in our solar system, so really, calling this story the 10th planet would still be inaccurate. But trust me, the title will be the least of your concerns. Centuries ago, a race of men on the far distant planet of Telos sought immortality. As bodies became old and deceased, they were replaced limb by limb, with plastic and steel. Finally, the brains were replaced by computers. The first Cybermen were born. Somebody read Arthur C. Clarke. Their main impediment was one that only flesh and blood men would have recognized. They had no heart. Neither do I. What's your point? No emotions, no feelings. They achieved their immortality at a terrible price. They became dehumanized monsters. How's it any different from the humans on this planet? They became aware of the lack of love and feeling in their lives and substituted another goal. Power! What? If they don't have emotions, they can't know what they're missing. So how could they have been aware of their lack of emotions? For that matter, without emotions, how can they desire power or anything? The long, low room housed 3 separate rows of control consoles and technicians. The scene is a familiar enough one to TV watchers. Okay, I'm aware this was a TV script originally, but it's still weird to read a line like that in a novel. Inside the TARDIS, the Doctor seemed to be aging rapidly. His absent-mindedness had increased to a point where he did not seem to recognize his two companions, frequently addressing them as Ian and Barbara. I'm not sure if it's the Doctor or a confused William Hartnell that's talking. So the TARDIS lands in Antarctica, its crew enters a base thinking they're back home, but... I don't want to distress you, but we are not quite where you think we are. The Doctor pointed to the calendar. I don't see anything, began Polly. And then her voice died away as she caught sight of the date. 2000. 2000? I don't remember the Cybermen causing any trouble then.
Well, I don't want to depress you both, but I'm afraid we're not quite where you think we are. What do you mean? Here, just take a peek at that.
1986? Oh no, and I thought we'd be able to get home.
It's the same guy who wrote the serial that wrote the book, and he can't even get his own details right. Had the sergeant and his men been out a moment sooner, they would have seen a long black torpedo-like object coming into land just beyond the TARDIS. Oh good, the as-of-yet unknown threat has landed. The sergeant gazed, horror-struck, as they came nearer and nearer. He made out their chests, which resembled concertina-like packs. For heads they had helmets with side handles, a mounted light, circles for eyes and a slit for a mouth. Yeah, back then this was supposed to scare us. The cyber leader Krail, who had fired on the soldier, stepped forward. His flat, monotonous voice spoke sharply. Stop! First of all, that is not flat and monotonous.
I will not return.
And second, since when do Cybermen have individual names? I thought the idea behind the Cybermen is that they have no individuality. We've got 2 men up in space, and if we don't act now, they won't get down alive. They will not return. Not return? Spoke up Barclay. Why not? It is unimportant. But don't you care? Care? The cyber leader repeated. I do not understand. Oh, I see. I see. They were supposed to be Care Bears villains originally. It didn't make sense a few pages ago, and it certainly doesn't make them any more threatening now. Your astronomers must have just discovered a new planet. Barclay, he nodded excitedly. Yes, that's right. That is where we come from. It is called Mondas. Isn't that one of the ancient names for Earth? Yes. Eons ago the planets were twins. Then we drifted away from you to the very edge of space. Hold it. The first 2 pages establish that the Cybermen were from Telos and just hitched a ride on Mondas later. Now they're suddenly actually from Mondas? This guy can't even be consistent within his own story! The energy of Mondas is nearly exhausted. It now returns to its twin planet for energy. Yeah, but as it turns out, Earth has too much energy for Mondas to handle, and the planet blows up as a consequence. You'd think these ultralogical people would have seen that coming. And if you're gonna say that maybe the Cybermen were desperate, then you keep forgetting they're supposed to be emotionless and can't get desperate. Nothing adds up here. Sure, you can say that it was written for a show that had practically no budget, which is why you don't hear me complain if it didn't make sense on the show. But a book should be an entirely different story. You could pretty much write in it what couldn't be made for the show. So yeah, Davis is without excuse. What's been happening to you? I'm not sure, child. An outside force of some kind, perhaps? This old body of mine is wearing a bit thin. It's nearly time for a change. Today, regeneration is nothing new, but back then, This line would have made no sense until the very end. So this is good foreshadowing. Krang, the new cyber leader, gestured at the gods with his cyber weapon. Krang? Krang is cyber leader? Who knew? Anyway, so the disaster is averted and they eventually reach their TARDIS again, but... Suddenly, a long wailing cry came from the control room. The voice was not the Doctor's. They rushed out. They hurried over to a long couch-like arrangement with a folding metal cover over it. The use of it had never been fully explained to them. The Doctor had simply said it compressed sleep. The cry seemed to have come from this apparatus. Wait, is he now saying that the regeneration was supposed to happen with the help of a machine? Well, I guess that kinda makes sense. But it does create a huge continuity error for the rest of the series. Also, if he goes so far as to change that little detail, why didn't he do the same for the rest of the story? In short, the story makes no sense and leaves a lot to be desired. Still, if it's any consolation, it could have been worse. This was D. I'm signing off.